Late last night in a game against the Brooklyn Nets, Jusuf Nurkic of the Portland Trailblazers went up for an offensive rebound and came down suffering a devastating injury that's likely season-ending to his leg. A lot of people probably see an injury like this happen and wonder how in the world is it possible that a professional basketball player can simply jump and land and suffer such a severe looking injury. Welcome back everybody. For those new, my name is Brian and I'm a doctor and a sports fan, and it's my goal here to take a look at different sports injuries and sports medicine topics to try and explain them in a way that you can hopefully learn from and better understand. So in the video today, I'm going to try to help you guys understand better why something like this happens. And bottom line, at the end of the day, this is a crazy fluke sort of injury. This is like a 1 in a million thing that there's no reason you should go out and be afraid to jump and play basketball because you think this is going to happen. This is a crazy one-off occurrence that can happen, and there's not a reason you should be paranoid about every other player in the league going forward. We'll try to explain why the leg can break in a situation like this, and then we'll talk about what the doctors are going to be doing right there on the court and what the next steps are going to be in order to ensure that it heals properly and that he's able to return next year. Quick reference so you guys understand what I'm talking about here. The tibia is that bone of the lower leg. It's your shin bone that you can feel. And then the fibula runs on the lateral or the outside aspect of that lower leg. Some people mentioned this looks like Caris LeVert's injury. This looks like Gordon Hayward's injury. Could this be the ankle? And it looks like it's too high up to have been anything related to the ankle. It certainly is possible that the ankle is partially dislocated down lower, but just based on where the fracture was in his leg, we can assume that it was the tibia at a minimum and likely the fibula as well. So how does this happen? How does a professional athlete jump up for a rebound, come down and break their leg? Think back to your high school physics class. We know that force is equal to mass times acceleration. So having a higher force comes from either a higher mass, a higher acceleration, or some combination of the two. In the case of an injury like Gordon Hayward or Caris LeVert, there was not as much mass as there was in the case of Nurkic, but because they're a lighter player, but there's a lot more acceleration. They're jumping higher, they have further to travel down, and so they're landing at a higher speed, causing a higher force. In the case of Nurkic, he wasn't that high off the ground, but because his body weight is so big, that causes a larger force to be imparted on his leg when he lands. Some more physics terms: compression, tension, and torsion. So compression is when we squeeze something end on end. Tension is whenever something gets pulled. And then torsion is when something gets twisted. We know that bones are really, really strong in compression. So whenever we're standing silently, all that weight is applying compressive forces through our legs. But our bones are really, really weak when it comes to torsion or bending. Sometimes when we see injuries like this, it's more likely that the bone was subjected to some sort of twisting or torsional force that causes it to break because bone isn't designed to maintain that type of a load. When we look at the footage of Nurkic's injury here, we can see that as he's going up, there's kind of a combination of him falling to that left side, and whenever his leg lands, he's not necessarily jumping straight up and coming straight down. He's jumping and then he's kind of falling to the side. And so as he plants and falls at the same time, that planting and twisting imparts some torsional stress on the tibia. This is why it's still like a 1 in a million thing though, because all it requires is that perfect amount of twisting and bending at just the right load, at just that susceptible time to cause the break. Think about all the other players we see in the NBA who jump miles through the air, land crazy, contorted, twisting their bodies around, and do completely fine. This isn't something that happens every time a player jumps and lands and twists, but whenever it does happen, in the case of someone even like a Kevin Ware from years ago, it's usually not that they're coming straight up and coming straight down. There's usually some side-to-side movement in their body where they're bending over, twisting over one way or another. It also looks like from the footage that he comes down and lands a little bit on someone else's foot, and so that's also going to provide some twisting in that tibia to cause it to possibly break. Now, right away on the court here, what the trainers and the medical staff are doing is they're trying to reset the fracture. With broken bones, we worry about blood supply and nerve damage, and so one of the first things they're trying to do is to reset or reduce the fracture. Whenever they get everything back in line, they then put this soft air cast around it to make sure that nothing moves again, and then it's quickly off to the hospital for surgery to repair it. Time really is of the essence here because what they're trying to do is prevent infection, especially if it is an open or a compound fracture. Certainly an open fracture would be much worse because you've exposed the body to the outside elements, you're at higher risk of infection, and it can be more complicated of a surgery and a recovery. What they're going to do is they're either going to put a rod inside the tibia called an intramedullary rod, or in some cases they'll do external fixation. External fixation is what we saw on Alex Smith's leg, and that's often used when there's a lot more concern up front for things like infection and healing, as opposed to going straight to that intramedullary rod. With Paul George, he had just a rod put in, but as you saw with Smith, he had all that big contraption and that external fixator on his leg and had a much more complicated course. Either way though, now it's all about getting to the surgery, getting the bone reset in place, and trying to minimize infection as best as possible. The bone itself will heal. That's not a concern. It's making sure that you don't have all these other complications like we've seen in previous athletes that can lead to a more prolonged recovery. But either way, there's no way around this. I mean, he's done for the year. There's no way you can fracture your leg and then come back and play the same season. But like we've seen with previous players, this doesn't mean that it's a death sentence to his career. We've seen Paul George come back from a similar injury and have the best season of his career right now. So unfortunately, not good news for the rest of this season, but overall, doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of his career is over. So that's it, everybody. I hope this was a little quick educational video for you guys to understand kind of why these types of injuries can happen, some things to think about in terms of how the player is moving through the air, and then the basic steps that they're going to be doing to try to fix this and correct it, and the things to keep in mind going forward with healing. If there's any updates along the way, if we find out more of what they did for the surgery, then we'll keep you informed and do an update video. But until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.